Looming over the Monongahela River southeast of Pittsburgh is an awe-inspiring relic of a bygone era in the city's life. It's been 45 years since the final piece of iron left the Carrie Furnace, and these rusted hunks are nearly all that remains of what was once the largest steel mill in the world, and a critical piece of the region's former industrial might. The full site of the Homestead Steel Works spanned both sides of the Monongahela, once employing 15,000 people. Like many of the industrial monuments around Pittsburgh, it would eventually fall victim to economics and importation, later becoming a playground for urban explorers and artists. Let's explore the origin, ending, and the remarkable saving of the Carrie Furnace. The importance of steel is paramount to Pittsburgh, from the towers looming in the skyline to the still operating mills to the famous Pittsburgh Steelers, not to mention the Carnegie name on almost everything here. At the peak of the American steel industry, Pittsburgh and its surroundings were dominated by steel mills. The city was near not only the rock that would need to be blasted to get iron, but the wealth of coal that powered the whole industry. The Homestead Steel Works first started production in 1881. Just 2 years after opening, the mill was purchased by Carnegie Steel, later absorbed by U.S. Steel as Andrew Carnegie retired. U.S. Steel maintained ownership of the mill until it closed. While the mill once did employ 15,000 people, it also generated the kind of problems steel mills do. A contentious labor clash in 1892 became deadly, and for much of the city's history, Pittsburgh had some of the dirtiest air in the world. The Carrie Furnace was where rocks were smelted in coal-fired furnaces to remove the iron, which then crossed the Homestead's private hot metal bridge to be turned into steel. At its peak, it produced over 1,000 tons of iron a day. The two remaining furnaces are numbers 6 and 7, which date back to 1907. Domestic steel production prospered during both World Wars as it was essential to the country's defense production, as well as during the post-war boom of the automotive and construction industries. But the good times were not to last. Pittsburgh's population peaked at 676,000 in 1950, followed by decades of rapid decline, not really stabilizing until 2010. It follows the trajectory of many cities in this part of the U.S., especially those in the Rust Belt strongly tied to domestic manufacturing. In the following decades, imported steel became more common. Factories got more efficient, and the need for places like Homestead diminished. The 1973 steel crisis put the American steel industry in a tailspin that would decimate places like Pittsburgh. A result of the 1973 oil crisis, it would trigger a massive drop in American steel production that to this day has never been reached again. The remaining Carrie furnaces closed in 1978, with the entire mill closing 4 years later. During its abandonment, the mill is relatively isolated, wedged between a railroad track and the Monongahela. The surrounding land quickly overgrew as the structure deteriorated, one of many of the abandoned husks of Pittsburgh's industrial heyday. It's worth noting that American steel production is very much still alive, including several U.S. steel mills still operating in and around Pittsburgh. But the level of the production that made Pittsburgh boom is unlikely to ever return. In 1996, the Carrie Furnace was designated as part of the Rivers of Steel National Heritage Area, starting the process of turning it into the National Historic Site we see today. The organization did millions of dollars in cleanup work, including the removal of asbestos and underground fuel tanks. Rivers of Steel also negotiated an agreement with graffiti artists who conceded to only spray on non-historic pieces of the building. The tour of the Carrie Furnace is cool and extensive. You get to walk through several buildings, including right up to the blast furnace. My favorite spot on the site is the open path by the train tracks. I will note that the majority of the 430-acre Homestead site was not preserved. Across the river, the land was redeveloped into the waterfront, a low-density mixed-use development. Thankfully, some of the more unique pieces were saved and incorporated, most notably the stacks and the gantry crane. The truth is, Pittsburgh is rife with abandoned manufacturing buildings, and the Carrie Furnace was the right thing to save here. Just downstream from the furnace, a new industrial park is taking form on the scrape site of the mill's rail yards. Pittsburgh is a piece of America like no other, a city finding its future among the monuments of the past. I found it to be one of the most interesting and beautiful places in the country, and for old building enthusiasts, a necessary pilgrimage. The Carrie Furnace is not only a fascinating place, but a glimpse into a different time in history. Thanks for joining me on my trip to the Carrie Furnace. Subscribe to the channel and come with me on the next adventure.